This is how we do it in Malaysia, like that, from the heart to your heart. Thank you for joining today. Now, just to check, to make sure that I hope you can hear me okay. It's still morning in Adelaide. It's actually 11:30. It's 12 o'clock your time. So welcome wherever you are. I'm also going to wish you in my first language in Malaysia is Malaysia. So selamat datang. I'm actually sitting in an office on the 8th floor at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Central Adelaide. So we say Nina Marni. This is the language of the first people in Adelaide. So to acknowledge that the land that we meet on today is the traditional lands of the Ghana people and respect their spiritual relationship with their country. And we acknowledge that the Ghana people as the traditional custodians of Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Ghana people today. So welcome everybody. I was so excited when I got this email from Lynn about a month ago because this is my passionate subject. It is. I wanted to tell you stories and I'm going to basically talk from heart to heart, and I chose the title Dignity in Care in the Hearts and Minds and Action, caring for cognitive impairment, because it's very close to my heart. When we talk about dignity in care, I think I've heard many people describe it. To me, unlike someone said that to me 15 years ago, it's about reigniting humanity. And I think that's my favorite phrase to describe dignity in care. I also wanted to say why I say yes to Lynn and Alison. So thank you again for inviting, because I want to connect the dots. I visited Tasmania about 5 years ago, and the flight was very late for an hour. So we had to dash via Melbourne from Adelaide, and then rented a car and then dashed to Alveston. And I was met by 300 wonderful people, though I was 1 hour late. And I talk about this subject. I knew Lynn wasn't there at that time. So I said, Lynn, you hear me talk about it today. So it's really about, I think it's about connecting the dots. How an idea. So my idea was when I was a younger consultant, when I returned from the UK, from Sydney, I mean, back to England. So I was born, I'll give you the context of the story. I was born in Malaysia. So I then grew up later in Ireland and then became a trainee doctor in Manchester. And then I worked in Birmingham in country, but became a consultant. And what I wanted at that time was to learn a bit more. So I decided to do masters in IT. But also I felt, oh my gosh, I have to spend a year and a bit in Australia, which I did. And that's when I remember this wonderful client or patient, and in an aged care ward in Sydney Liverpool Hospital. That's where I worked at that time in 2006. And the question was this: she was 64 years old, and I felt, wow, but then at that time her skill or language skill has changed due to young onset dementia. And people were asking me, how do we communicate and organize a rehabilitation? The answer was this: the next morning I came to work and I thought I heard this wonderful piano music, Moonlight, Beethoven Moonlight Sonata. And it was she. She was, at that time, a teacher, retired teacher that can play piano so well. And to me, the language of rehabilitation, restorative, was to use music. So I went back to the UK not long after, and that's why you see your first photo today, and that's a picture of the flowers. I'm not certain what's happening in Tasmania, but I'm certain flowers are very welcome in hospital. I'm certain not just hospitals, but your hospices, but also your community and aged care sector environment. Where I used to work in Birmingham, in the hospital, these were banned. And I came back from Sydney and I thought, wow, all the wishes of healing and love are kept in a pile, are put in the day room. Why? Because you know why? Because the water that's left in the jug, they said, is contaminated with bugs. And then I said, look, I believe this is wrong. And I know it might be one of me, but there are millions of families, you know, and our nurses, allied health and volunteers say, we need to change this. So you need one voice. So luckily there's a big voice from Imperial College London that did a report. You know what the result shows? It stated this is about the voice of dignity. So dignity in care is not just about how we care for people, but helping to change the environment to be healing. You know what was the finding was? It was inconvenient for the staff. The only outcome was it was inconvenient to the staff, because you know why? We have to put the flowers in the vases. That was the outcome from the research. So you know what? Flowers came back in my hospital in Birmingham at that time. To me, that's one win. Now, my second day after coming back from Sydney, they asked me to look after this wonderful lady. She knew that it was time. It was the end of life for her. And then she spoke to me. She held my hand. She said, Dr. Abraham, I need to say goodbye to my best friend, and his name is Dennis. I told her, of course you can. Let me make the phone calls for you. And guess who was Dennis? I can't remember how Dennis looked like, but I'm almost certain he looks like the guy in the middle. If you see, because I haven't got my, it looks like him. So Dennis the dog, who was at that time 14 years old. You know what happened in a medical ward? As soon as the CEO, hospital executive heard the story, I got this email. No, we cannot allow pets to come to our medical wards because it's not hygiene. The only way for your patient to come and say goodbye, she needs to be brought down from her ward, from her bed into the medical ward, the medical hospital entrance. You know what was saddened? She couldn't, because she needed to be connected to equipments to be kept alive. And you know what? She died without saying goodbye to Dennis. What would you do? What would you do? I think, again, we need more voices. So this is when I thought of this. So I like to visit before COVID. I love traveling. So I'm not saying that I'm what I meant to say is that when you go to Milan, though their main language is Italian, but they got this wonderful David Michelangelo sculpture. Get fit or get fat, Faizal. So my first name is Faizal. And I always thought to myself, Faizal, what would you do? Would you like to see flowers bend? No. So we have to change. So I thought, let's use the voice of dignity. So I'll tell you a formula. So I don't want to get fat. So what I wanted to do at that time was this. I wanted to make sure that we use all the resources. We kill people with kindness. So what we did was we found our champions. And I called the chief of nurse. Her name is, at that time, Kay Fawcett. I said, Kay, can I bring cupcakes and caffeine for you, please? And then from that, we started this revolution. We started a lot of innovation, and obviously this is from the basis of dignity in care. So we started a campaign. So dignity in care to me is not just about reigniting humanity, it's about asking my ways of working. I'm not certain whether you can see this. I'm going to go dwell into this much more deeper afterwards. So I've got this green banner behind me, and number one, it says zero tolerance to all forms of abuse. And also number 5, listen and support people and express and allow them to express their wishes. But also one of the things that I love is really to allow our consumer to complain without the fear of retribution. So we want this to become the principles of working for the hospital I work in at that time. This is now officially for the past 3-4 years in this country is the ways of working, how we should care for people with cognitive impairment. I will dwell into it much more deeper after this. I must share you the story. So I migrated from England to Adelaide about 11 years ago, and again, my first week always filled with excitement because it was from cold to warm weather. It was 45 at that time. So I thought that's okay, I can deal with this. But what I cannot deal is with seeing people vulnerable, older persons, having to go through processes or how they are looked after, especially from people who are having cognitive impairment. And to me, it's about the abuse of, or using abuse of chemical and also abuse of physical restraint. So I remembered my first week in Adelaide, and I saw in the current hospital where I'm working at, And I remember meeting this gentleman. So my job at that time was a liaison geriatrician. So my mission in life is always to help people to live longer and better. So I went to a ward and I was thinking, I'm going to be positive in my first week here in Adelaide. And I went to see this gentleman in CCU, coronary care unit. And I saw this. I've not seen this in my life where people are restrained physically. So these are shackled instruments. I've not seen this in my life. And then I asked the staff, what's happened? And then they said, oh, he became agitated and he was quite restless and became dangerous. But I said, can I ask you, do you know why he became like this? Oh, he was unwell. He had a pneumonia, he had a delirium. But also, they said, oh, but there are two daughters outside. And I asked him, what is the man's first language? And they said Polish. Have you asked him what he wanted? I brought in the two daughters, and the two daughters said to me, and translated and said, Dad wanted a cup of coffee. So from a perspective of someone who presented with cognitive impairment, I felt if only we were to be able that offer that cup of coffee in Polish that morning, we would not be seeing people being shackled in this state. And I asked, and I met the most wonderful nurses, like health and other doctors. You know what? It was okay, I thought, for them to say that this is how we practice things. And I said, no. It's not how we should do things, just like the story of the flowers, okay? And the stories of, so what I meant to say is this, you know, I said, look, we have to change, because what if this were to be a family member of yours? So the same week, I look after a 100-year-old lady in my ward, this time in my ward, and she speaks Italian, her family are wonderful. And she came in because of falls, and she wanted to go home badly. And the family told me that we are unable to look after mom because the care needs is very high, so we can't. And you know what? I don't know whether you've met, she is one of the world's strongest 100-year-old lady that I've met in my life. You know what? From the bruises that we've got in our arm and our legs, because she wanted to go home. And that's okay for her to go home, because to her, in her mind, and I asked her, what does your mom want? And then I was so lucky that day, the secretary that I worked with came down with me to the ward. And her name is Connie. So Connie told me and whispered to me, Faizal, this lady speaks Calabrese Italiano. And she just told me she's 21 years old, not 100. She's got a son and a baby daughter at home that needs to be fed. And her husband will be quite sad if she's not at home and see the children hungry. And to me, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? I've allowed a 100-year-old lady who in her mind 21 years old and ban her from going home. So what do we do? How do we problem solve this? Do we do this? Do we instigate restraints? Do we give her more chemicals so that she's sedated? Or perhaps we need to understand a bit more her needs. So what we did was this. So this is not the patient, this is not the, so what we did was this, at that time, I started to make connections with Dementia Australia. And what we did was we brought in a baby doll that has got a heartbeat, and the leg of this baby doll can move too. And you know what? I thought, what if we were to introduce her to this baby doll that might be like her baby in the past? So this 100-year-old lady took the baby onto her arms and proudly showed everybody. And she became the world's nicest granny. And you know what? So we said, okay, the family agreed that she should go into an aged care residential home. And we wanted that. But in 2010, 2011, at that time, our ambulance crew did not allow baby dolls to enter the ambulance. And guess what happened? Guess what happened if someone takes the baby away? So again, just like the stories of the flowers and the door, we need to change how we work. So since then, ambulances allow baby dolls to come with them. Okay? Now, I hope you can, so I'm just going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you stories. I've given you an introduction, and you can see the 10 principles of dignity in care. And if you see the 10 principles of dignity in care, it was introduced in 2010. And this is not by me, by a lot of champions. What we did like today, we a lot of networking, and we felt that this should be the ways of working for this hospital by our sister hospitals, and wanted to connect with aged care environment. So I will shall tell you the stories how we connect, and I hope where you are, where you work in Tasmania, you can do better than we do here. I also wanted to set the scene, and I will share you the story on how we champion the cognitive impairment campaign in South Australia. And I hope also, if you haven't heard about dementia care programs in hospitals, if any of you are working or based in Hobart, you probably have heard of this, but I will share you again the story about this very shortly. So what you see on the slides are my ways of working. And I felt very passionate about this. I felt that where we work, we need to embrace this. You know, obviously, it's so important that number one, number two, number three, but my favorites are always number 7. I felt that the only way for me to help to improve my ways of working is to ensure that my patient are able to complain without the fear of retribution. And I really hope that we always engage with families and members and carers as our care partners. I felt, and I always believe that, you know, when dignity is present, people are in control. They become more confident and comfortable, and they are more able to make decisions and choices for themselves. So at the front in the slide, there are links, which I'll repeat again towards the end. So the links are actually hosted by Dignity in Care Australia and Dignity in Care UK. Do you know what? There are lots, so there are 25 alphabets in English, in English, like 25. And I always believe if plan A doesn't work, then you have 25 more. So let's do plan A, and then we'll do plan B. And then if you go to plan Z and that doesn't work, then we'll repeat again the cycle. This is where I am at. I'm actually located on level 8. So the reason why I showed this picture, this is overlooking out from the research building. So we have a wonderful research building located across the campus. So where I work is a Central Adelaide Local Health Network hospitals. There are 3 main hospitals. One is in the main campus. That is the Royal Adelaide Hospital. The picture on the left, when it was being built, it was open officially sometime early next year. Now it's run by robots that help to transport and deliver meals and medication. So it's really the 21st century hospital. Where I work in the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, I work in a healing unit. When it was built 15 years ago, it was purposely built to be focusing on older person and to be a healing environment. It has 2 separate gardens. It's got bus stop gardens, and it's got 2 separate dedicated gyms for people who are elderly and frail. But what I wanted to show you again is this. Do you know what? When I came to meetings and places, I was always presented with so many books, so many protocols, so many guidelines, so many meetings, but not much action. And I felt so strongly that research is important, but it has to be translated into practice. It has to focus on our core business. And I believe our core business is to look after older persons and those vulnerable the best, as excellent as physically possible. My other job, so I have my other job then working in an acute care environment. I'm very privileged for quite many years now. My other work is being connected and working with Dementia Australia. And with Dementia Australia in South Australia about 4 or 5 years ago, with support and funding from a charity organization headed and led by Dementia Australia, there is a new team developed for the past 4 or 5 years called the Nightingale program, led by nurse consultants who are trained in geriatric medicine and in palliative care. So there are 3 full-time staff. So you can see Jane, Little Dyke, and Allison. And if you want to hear them more, or you can hear about them, about the story of how this innovation has changed a lot of people's life and allow people to die at home with dignity, please zoom in via the Dementia Australian website for their conference presentation oral paper this coming Friday in the afternoon. I also work and not just in Dementia Australia, but also with Dementia Service Australia Ham Care. So some people might call them DBMAS. So, but also in the same network, we also help to support people living in community and in aged care who are living with change in their primary behaviors, or some people might call severe behavior. So being the only geriatrician that work for Dementia Australia and Ham Care DBMAS, I'm very privileged that I've met many wonderful workers and staff helping people living with dementia with dignity and focusing at the end of their life and working together in partnership with acute care, with our networks, community, primary care, and with our aged care sector industry. Now, I'll tell you my story again. So if you remember the story about Dennis the dog, yes? And this is where I used to work. So this is in Birmingham. If you go behind that building, you can smell Cadbury World factory chocolate and milk smell behind that building. And it's the UK first single room only building. It's funded by private finance initiative, and the hospital in Adelaide, Royal Adelaide, actually used the principles of this. And I wanted to show you this because I discovered that putting patients, our older persons, in single room is not their favorite. I know why we do this, because we wanted to reduce infection across infection. But my patients at that time felt that they are lonely, and they felt that the time to socially interact is much more limited if they are put in a single room. So my patient at that time liked to be left at the front of the door so that they can wave and communicate with other patients in that hospital. I don't know whether you can relate to the shape of this building. It reminds me of toilet seats, okay? If you can see the tree building. But what it is this, I believe it was the first hospital in the UK that introduced innovation. And the innovation, I believe, is because of partnership. So it started in 2000 and 2007, 2008, and then we moved into a new hospital, which is what you see. But what it was the voices of our nurses, our care worker, our caretaker, the porters. And what we did, we believed in this. What it was, in about that time, there was energy in 2006 called Dignity in Care champions. So the champions came all over throughout the United Kingdom, and then consumers were voicing, saying that this is not how we should care for people with dementia, people who's got disability. So the energy was there, work and voices from consumers. And the consumers came together with the workers in this sector and came with the 10 principles. I mentioned briefly with you, and then I hope the take-home message today, if you can promote and use this as your organization ways of working. I mentioned about zero tolerance to all forms of abuse. I'm not talking about medication or physical, I'm talking about emotional abuse as well. And the understanding that within our staff, we have to support each other well. We have to make sure that dignity care matters not to our patients or consumers or clients, but to our staff, that we work together as well. And to make sure that respect, and make sure that people are giving the personalized service, and also to maximize their choice, independence and control. I like number 5, I like number 7, privacy. So how can we have privacy if our hospitals are shared gender ward? So I felt strongly about that. So perhaps one of the reasons why at that time the hospitals were thinking about single room, so that we can take away that gender mixed ward basis at that time. And maybe at that time too, why we should ban ward gowns that can expose people's behinds and backs. It becomes more dignified as well. I also believe that loneliness and isolation is a major factor in our hospitals, and I will tell you about some things that we do. So again, at that time, the question was, what do we do? If you remembered about my cupcakes and coffee, so I'll introduce to you to some. So Margaret Harris, Allison, and other nurse lead in the hospital. I will show you Kate Fawcett afterwards. So we had a lot of cupcakes, a lot of coffee, a lot of 3 E's. Now, what are 3 E's? 3 E's is education, 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 going back to the flow. Example, if today I'll be visiting an orthopedic ward for someone elderly and frail who had operation. And I felt that I've spoken to the nursing team, to the medical team, and I felt that the care was undignified. And I felt that this patient pets has not been changed quickly. And I felt that the communicated family were not communicated. What I would do, I'll pick up the phone and I said, okay, I know you're very busy, but I need you to come down to our ward. So Kay is the chief nurse for the hospital organization. She will come down and Kay will go to the ward. She's not going to shout or scream or be abusive. She will come and she put a gown on and she will become a worker that day. She told me Faizal is called going back to the floor. What we wanted is the leaders, the managers, the nuns, the consultants going back to the floor and become workers again. And what she does the next day, she'll get scones and coffee and cupcakes and meet the staff. And I said, guys, this way of working doesn't work. We have to change. And I felt so strongly too. I said, okay, we have this wonderful network. It's not just supported by the Department of Health. We have a council called the Teen Care UK Council, but I think we have to do more. Let's make dementia sexy. I apologize quickly to you if you find the word is not very pleasing to your eye. What I meant to say is this: I want more nurses, more doctors, allied health volunteers, students to work in this industry, to care for the most vulnerable. That's why we have to make dementia super sexy. So that was my mantra for many, many years. Some people might not like it, but you know what? That's life. But what it is, we wanted to focus this. I felt that we have to support discharge planning well. We have to make sure that we talk about how delirious about dementia we are. I was not allowed to put making dementia sexy as a topic for the month, but I can do that. And you know what? Let's talk about spirituality. So during the month, that month, we do free sessions, not just for the workers, but for the families, for the carers, caregivers, and people can come from inter-hospital, can come from other networks to come and listen to the free lectures. So we did this because we felt about 3 E's: education, education, education is so important. Now, I wanted to talk to you about Dennis because I haven't forgotten Dennis at all, okay? Dennis stuck to my mind, to my heart. And I said to Kay, I need to get the support of the governing board of the University Hospital Birmingham to change their heart. I want you to help me so that I can tell and convince them that pets, it must be allowed in our hospital. We did that. We worked with the infection control people team. And then you know what? That we had working dogs, we had cats, we had rabbits. My passion in life, other than my family and my job, I breed parrots and birds. I used to have 600 parrots in Adelaide. Now I've got less than 100. So this is my passion. In the UK, hasn't changed. It didn't change. So what I did, my morning walk round is my medical walk round. Afternoon, I bring in my parrots to visit my patients in the ward. And you know what? Slowly, I see people opening their hearts and minds. I see Margaret Harris, the matron for older persons, say, Faizal, I'm going to go to our local flower shop. And you know what they said to me? They're going to give us the unsold flowers so that we can have sister matron Margaret Harris flower arrangement session with the patients in the ward. Okay, then we have our nurses said, Faizal, I think I can do this. In fact, I said, what about playing guitar? So we had one of the social worker called Enid, and she played guitar. And what thing that struck me was that is I can see changes. And like I said, what if we get the physio to change our group activity to fund music aerobics? And slowly, we see the change, people coming from all aspects, our workers, our cleaners, our cooks from the house, starting to volunteer. And with that, it became UK first program. We introduced this. We introduced UK first volunteer support program for our acute care hospital, trained volunteers of men. So we have volunteers that are trained by our team, and they would spend time with the consumers, with the patients, supporting them. Because I feel social interaction is much lacking, not just in our acute care, in our aged care sector environment. And we prove to the organization when we allow pets, we allow family to engage with us better, we can reduce the length of stay by 4 days. You know how much 4 days cost in Australia? $12,000 saved by the organization. So these were the ideas that we were thinking as a group. So these are the champions that I was talking about. So, and one thing that I was so passionate about, and I said, you know, Margaret, I speak 5 languages, but English is my 3rd language. So what happens in the future when I develop memory impairment or dementia? Are you going to allow me to bring my 100 pets or parrots to be looked after in the hospital or in an aged care sector? Because I don't take breakfast or lunch as a lifestyle. Are you going to force me to eat lunch and breakfast? And what if at that time I defaulted to my main language, Malaysian and Indonesian? Are you going to try and learn that language? What we did, robots come in. Robots come in. So that robots that you see follows the nurses and the doctors to help to translate. And a family can dial in from New Zealand, for instance, to the UK to communicate with the dad or the mums or the siblings that they love. And also we had computer system. So this is the lead, his name is Daniel. At that time, he was the lead coordinator for the hospital. So we had a computer system that it's called My Life Story, a reminiscent computer software. So the family can share music, can share photos. We can plan for the person's activities that week. And to me, it's about engaging our consumer well, empower them, and then they can make good choices. Now, one of the things that I love, I don't know whether you can see Aiden Seal's name clearly there. So number 5 principles of dignity care is to be able to listen and listen and support our consumers to express their wishes and wants. I love this because in Guys and Thomas's in London, Eileen Seals, the matron at that time said, if we were to do something for our organization, we want to do this. We want to allow our patient, let them finish their sentence. Don't stop them. For me, it was hard. I don't know whether Lynn and Alison, you agree, but for me, I can talk for Australia. That's why I wanted to speak for 3 hours, but I understand an hour and 20 minutes is suffice plus 10 more minutes. I felt strongly that if I can do this, perhaps you can help me to spread the message of the 5th principles. Allow your consumers, your clients, your patient to finish their sentence. I'll be most happy. So networking for dignity in care is not just about learning and sharing knowledge in your local communities. So I tend to network a lot at that time in other regions, in this case, Scotland too. And I love the idea. I love the idea that they have UK first dementia-friendly city, And we network with people at that time, and now still I network people in Japan. And I fell in love with their principles. I love this. So we shared our principles of working. I said this is how we do it in Australia and in the UK. And then the lead professor who at that time led the Japan National Dementia Research Institute based in Tokyo and Sendai in Japan. And so he said to me, Faizal, I said, I know you come to see me to talk about robots. I said, but no robots here. We have a lot of robots. It's you, me. Why, Faizal? I'll tell you why. Our principle of working, we use Hippocrates. Hippocrates is a Greek philosopher. And he said, Faizal, he said, when it comes to diseases or condition, example, dementia, we cure, or cancer, take cancer, he said, we cure sometimes, treat often, but comfort always. So it's not the robots, Faizal, it's you, me, and we have to make sure we share knowledge and educate. I love the fact that they've got this orange band in Japan, meaning that if you see in primary school kids or Koban is their local police, they wear orange band, meaning that they had undergo dementia training program. And I thought that is wonderful. And I like the fact that they have on-call network for each town communities. If somebody frail or elderly or with dementia wanders and got lost, and the on-call, the team or the community will help to take the older person back home safely. I thought that was just beautiful. And to me, dignity, so this is picture. So I wanted to bring you back about the team. Before I left in 2010 in January, I said goodbye to Kay Fawcett, the chief nurse. That's not my body, that's just my face, Margaret Harris. What I wanted to do at that time is I have to leave because I have to be closer to family. But you know what? I promise you, there are millions of people like you and I in Australia. I'm sure there are millions as well in Tasmania that wants to make dementia super sexy. Eh? When I came here, I asked, why is it so hard? Why is it so difficult? We know already the leading cause of death for Australia since last year. Number one in female is dementia, followed by heart disease, and then you have stroke and cancer. And I'm certain soon will be male and female. Why is it so hard for us to do this? Why there are so many documents and protocols that have been shelved on the shelf or but not being utilized or used? So I felt that with my understanding of working in a new environment, we need to have our network. So today you can tap person on your left and right and say, let's do something different. Let's become champion. So perhaps champion for dignity in care, champion for dementia, or champion for end of life. So we had our GEM liaison nurses. So, and I felt, look, I said to our nurses, Lynn Wakefield, Denise, who's both retired, and then we got Carla, who's our unit manager now for liaison services. I said, the problem is always when it comes to provision of care, personal care. So we have to make sure that we work with our OT, our nurses, and the family. And if we don't have robots, we can have other means of doing this to translate better. We have to minimize, we have to think, how do we ban physical restraint? But if we were to do it, think it as the last resort. So we have to make sure that we work not just with the committees, but with the consumers. We have to have our relevant bodies working closely with our consumer groups and understanding there's a ways of working. Now I'm going to share to you this story because this is about, so I think I'm going to focus about how we should do much better in providing end-of-life care for those living with dementia. Now, this is the late Ralph Potter and his wife Jenny Potter, and I've got permission for some time now from Jenny to share their story. So Ralph was diagnosed when he was young, age early 50s, with young onset dementia. He loves his family. He's got a lovely wife, a beautiful, at that time, son and daughter. And so when he was diagnosed, he was working. And he was told quickly he cannot work anymore because he had Alzheimer's disease. And he did stop work. And then he said, okay, I love this. He loves photography. He loves traveling. And bearing in mind that when this happened, I haven't moved to Australia yet, but these stories were shared by the family. And he told me, and the wife told me, the first year of diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, they wanted to be connected to the big body, Alzheimer's South Australia at that time, and they met the newly appointed general manager, and this is the fabulous Marie Alford, a good friend of mine. Marie just started work in this industry, and then Ralph asked, can I go to holiday? Can I go to Africa for my holiday? And Marie, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind me telling you this, because she said, oh, Faizal, at that time, I wish I knew much more about dementia. She says, no, Ralph, you cannot go because you've got Alzheimer's disease. And guess what? He went. He had the best holiday in Africa. And now, we speak about this fondly. And I asked Jenny, I said, Jenny, I wanted to know at that time he had mild Alzheimer's. So he was able to do a lot of things, but not so many things that he's able before. Example, bills payment. So I'm talking about the context of to be able to check the severity of Ralph's dementia. So what happened after that? So when I met Ralph, this was after about 8-9 years, perhaps in total, plus his pre-symptoms or prodromal symptom, maybe about 10 years of living with Alzheimer's disease. When I saw him, he shifted, remember, from the trip to Africa, from mild to moderate, where moderate means that they need help to choose a tire, up to the point that he needs 2 people two people to help to do the personal care. At that time, Ralph was on a lot of medication. He was living in an aged care environment, not far from the hospital I worked. He was on 2 antipsychotics. He was on 2 benzodiazepines. And we knew at that time that Jenny said the reason why it was the tough choice to get Ralph to move into a caring environment or nursing home, because it was really difficult to do the personal hygiene because Ralph at that time was resistive. Bearing in mind that he lost a lot of his visual field, tunnel vision only. He had a loss of muscle weight, and his language skill is very minimal, maybe 1 or 2 words in a day. When I saw him, he came to our hospital in our ward, and I thought he was pacing. He was making circles and walking, 400 circles in 2 hours. You know what it was? It was the effect of antipsychotic leading to akathisia, described as inner restlessness, when antipsychotic are given excessively. And I said to Jenny, I said, one thing for certain, we know, Jenny, that Alzheimer's disease is a terminal diagnosis, so we must plan for a good death. On average, the lifespan of male living with Alzheimer's disease is 6.7 years. So Ralph is at year 10, year 11. So you have done superbly well to go through beyond that 6-7 years, now at year 10, year 11. So we need to make certain what we do, we must plan for a good death. The wife said, let's do this. First thing to do, cut down the antipsychotics slowly. Introduce pain management. Understanding, if you walk 400 circles in 2 hours, you get back pain. You know what? After a few days, Jenny and I was in the day room in the ward, and Ralph was walking, but not too many circles. Came to us. I tend to do silly things in the ward. I use, the bubble, soap bubbles. I like to see the bubble plop on people's head. That's, to me, it's a sign of how we use, techniques, environment, music. And Ralph loves the Port Adelaide Football Club. So in his rooms, it's covered with the flags and memorabilia from the Port Power. He loves the smell of Calvin Klein's perfume or aftershave. So we spray that in his room. We make sure that he can walk freely by pushing the bed closer to the wall. We close his doors because we want to minimize the overstimulation. But when we saw Ralph, after a few days of being less or little antipsychotic, the man who speak little words started to speak. You know what he spoke, Alison? I hate you. You know what? Jenny, the wife, said, Faizal, I'm so happy. I said, why, Jenny? Because he hasn't spoke this many words for a long time. So we know the reason why he needs to be on antipsychotic, because he was having changes due to cycles. He was having hallucination, agitation, and distress. So that did not last very long, because you know what? When we cut down medication, so he started to do this. He was hallucinating. But at this time, the wife asked me a question, very importantly, how much time has he got left? And bearing in mind, at that time, in this hospital in central Adelaide, we cannot refer to palliative care because it's not cancer. We can't refer. Okay? So what, again, back to the story of the flowers and Dennis the dog, we had to change this, right? So we make cupcakes and coffee. So we met with Roger Hunt, who was the head of Palcare. I said, Roger, there are 1 million people behind me wanting a good death for this man. Help me. So Roger came and he said to the wife, looking at the frailty, about the condition, about the muscle wasting, about the distress, about needing fentanyl treatment, 1 month. So what we did, we planned with the family, with the children, with the grandchildren. I said, we're going to take him back home. Where he came from, his care home. We had to educate the staff at his care home. And he died 28 days later. What I meant to say is this: if we did not do that, we cannot refer people dying end of life of dementia to Palcare in South Australia at that time. Okay? So always go back to the flowers and the Dennis the dog again. I think we can do this. And we did. And because of that, I'll tell you, towards the end, we had campaigns, we have groups that connect not just hospital, aged care, schools, in country. So we had our first national conference, and the main award is called the Ralph Porter Award. because he was a super champion. He did memory walks, and the family donated to this cause, and it was won by an aged care organization. And you can see Jenny, the wife, giving the award ceremony. So what I meant to tell you is this: it's so important that we need to know, when we see our education is important, knowing the dementia stage severity, and also understanding that when the behavior needs to be supported by not just one team, but many teams possible, and understanding that what you see, restraints, drugs, doesn't work most of the time. And I don't want to get fat, Faizal. I want to be thin and glamorous, right? So we have to do this. We have to do this. And also, going back again, you know, one thing I was so privileged for many, many years, I chaired the Dementia Australia Consumer Alliance for the state. And you know what? The first meeting, families, consumers with dementia came together, and I said, let's talk about 10 top points. What would you like? Bearing in mind that towards the end is the dignified death. You know what they want? Number one, stigma reduction. Stop the stigma. Timely diagnosis, supporting family to navigate to get the right services at the right time, helping the family to get respite support that they deserve and they needed. Up to the point, how do we get connected so that the end of life must be the best possible? And how do you support the caregivers who was caring for 10 years or longer or less or longer, so that they're not forgotten, and support them? And this is what dignity in care means to me. Again, making the change and understanding our ways of working. Now, I keep on showing you just to bring you back to this again. So this is the clinical block. It's actually on that side of the building. This is where my ward is based, on the ground floor. So we had champions from 2010, 1, 2, 3, thousands of champions. And I felt, oh, what if we have a champion, but that's not enough? So we need to make sure that we have champions outside hospital. So we met with networks. So aged care networks could be, example, in South Australia, Helping Hand, Anglicare, Elder Care, a lot more. What about the disability sector? Let's meet with them. Let's have cupcakes and coffee with them. And also, I felt, wow, what about schools? Because schools can do lots, because they have got this young energy that we want to make dementia sexy. We want them to become nurses, allied health workers in this industry. And also, we want to make sure that whatever we do, we have experts. So we have dementia care experts. We wanted to make certain that our nurses embrace and become nurse consultants, finish a program either via Flinders University master's program in Jurong. So we support them, create that network, create that subject and degree, working with partnership. And also we wanted to make just how we did in the UK. It took 2 years to get docs to be approved to come to our ward. 2 years. 2 years is okay, better than 4 years, right? So docs started to come at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. So we wanted to make sure that we invite, so I don't know whether you can see this picture. So this is the picture of primary school kids from Nailsworth, local school, that came and sang choir. And at that time, we had students. So students that can play guitar, they play guitar. We also wanted to do this. We said, look, what if we invite the state opera? You know that I can tell you, if you pick up the phone, people will come in numbers to support. So state opera singer came to the jam unit on the ground floor and sang opera. I could see many tears, not just to the patients, but to the staff. Listening opera live. To me, this is something that we need to be doing more and more. So I'm talking about our ward clerk, Connie, that works upstairs but can be downstairs. Talking not just about, you know, the patient. So we have volunteer program. So our volunteer program is we train volunteers to work in an aged care environment to support people who are lonely and patients who are in distress living with dementia. And this is what I think dignity in care means. It's about sharing knowledge and make sure that we do all possible way things to help support people to live better. One thing that we are missing in 2010, I said, we need someone glamorous. We need somebody that can become the ambassador. So I remember at that time, I spoke to Maggie Beer's PA. She told me, Kate told me, her PA, just came back. Maggie is very tired. She just came back from Victoria, but Faizal, she would like to talk to you. I did speak to Maggie. I met her in Barossa. So for those who are not familiar, Barossa, this is the capital, grape wine industry for South Australia. You should go and visit her farm shop. I love her pheasant pate, but the reason why I wanted to meet her with the team of nurses, like hell, our champion said, we want you to become our champion ambassador for Australia for dignity in care. She told me, Faizal, I just came back from Victoria in Queensland. I was upset. I was upset that the law of nursing homes is that the eggs must be boiled for 17 minutes until it becomes porcelain. So I'm going to change that, Faizal. If I were to help and change anything at all, I want to make certain that food is dignified. I want to make sure those horrible, pureed, blended food that being put on the plate looks better and smells better. And I want to make sure that it's visually appetizing. And with that, she eventually wrote books about it and 101 recipe for Alzheimer's. So she became our spokesperson. And if you see the doll is the same doll that we introduced to what our 100-year-old granny, okay? The same doll. What I meant to say is this. So she said beer for dignity. So to me, I said, look, we give beer in the ward, not a problem. But we wanted to do this. We wanted to focus in South Australia at that time. This is the 20 days following year. Focus how we did it in the previous places. We wanted to focus on delirium. And you know what? One thing that I hate, and I'm glad that we've changed that, is the word aggression. It's not the person's fault that they're aggressive. It's not. So the language, so in 2015, 2016, Dementia Australia released the dignified language, how to address language when we're working with people with dementia. So I'll show you an example. The most favorite lecture attended, the one that we have to do twice in that month, is dignity in care in spirituality. So the vicar, who is also a healthcare consultant that works here, had to speak twice because the lecture theatre was full. And again, we invited from outside. We have a network, so we have a network mailbox. So we send invite not just in Metro, but outside Metro. People come, but they wanted to hear more, to hear about dignity in care and spirituality. So how we do this? So obviously we communicate by sending emails. We announce in hospital. I don't know what, you haven't heard our speaker system yet. So we would say, oh, there's a lecture this month, dignity in care in this and this. Now we had to stop that for a little bit because there were changes in the organization for the past 2 years and COVID. So a lot of things have changed by COVID, as you probably know already. So what we wanted to do is this. We wanted to make sure that we utilize our strength. So we have a lot of workers. Our workers are fantastic. And if you ask most of them, majority say, yeah, of course we become champions. Of course. But we have also, our nursing care, fundamentals of care. We also are conscious that we have our hospital accreditation. And you know what? I said, I think we need to make sure that dementia must be super sexy. So 2010, we wanted to do our annual Mindful of Dementia Day. So we have a day that we invite communities. We open our hospital. We invite communities to come, and we invite speakers from interstate and overseas to talk about new innovations in dementia. So these are some examples of the work. So we even did once or twice in country. So we have a lecture forum. We make certain that the sessions are free, but we also wanted people to go back and remember that, to make certain that the ways of working, mindful of dementia, wherever you work, and make sure we spread the good message and work with other sectors too. Now, we even had that afternoon, special events. So we had Marilyn Monroe and Dean Martin. They're not real, by the way. So we had dancing session with our consumers, okay, in our hospital. Think about it. Our hospital, we can do this. Of course we can. So what I meant to say to you, and I hope you become our network too, our champions. You can do this better than us. Our network means that you need to involve not just the UK, not just the UK is that place, but you have Tasmania. You can do this better than us. We have Lions Club, the Lions Club purposes, and they are our champion, and then they are our partners. They even donate. I'll give you an example. I said to them, I'm a bit stressed because my day room has no big projector. Can you buy one? And you know what? Projector came. I told them why? Because game is interesting. But also I wanted to use Google Street Mapping. If you have a big projector, you show our GEM patients or other patients where the place they were born or they grew up. With Google Street Map, you can see their eyes lit up. Just like when we talk about the State Opera. What I meant, you can do this. You got phones where you are. You can open Google Street Map and start to engage your consumer better. So networking, not just with hospitals, aged care, community, health care council, Parkinson Council, Dementia Australia, Health care, it's so important because we need more and more of champions to make certain that it becomes a way of working. It becomes normal for us. So we had our state conference. Then we also, our state conference means that we do it invite aged care. This was done in a nursing home. So why I show you these photos, one of our super champion, at that time she was 97 years old. She never touched a paintbrush, but living with Alzheimer's disease. In her art classes, Joyce was able to do her first art exhibition attended by the local MPs. This is the results when you partner with aged care sector. But also, well, I also work in the country in Port Lincoln, and I work closely with our networks, with our Indigenous Health Support Services team. So we have Uncle Wally, Auntie Shirley, that would go to the communities and say, look, you know, older persons, we need, if they have concerns memory, come and see Dr. Faizal in clinic. But let's network with our team to support them to live longer and better. And also working closely with the disability services is super, super important. So we wanted them, so they obviously champion this in their own organization. So we have a website platform. The link would be at the end of this talk. So you can be linked to the UK website and also to, I think, we compile examples of excellence of dignity in care, like Plane Tree thing and Hogweed in Holland. And I hope you would listen and perhaps share stories. So our conference, first national conference was in 2015. And at that time, we wanted to celebrate. Now, how did we do this? Like just how I'm doing it today. We visited 2-3 years ago to Canberra. What we wanted is to get not just networking with the hospital, with the aged care sector, with the primary care, but we wanted to do simulation. So I did mention about the effective way to help share knowledge is to simulate. This is not a client, this is a worker with dementia, so with Dementia Australia at that time. So we wanted is to see how staff at that setting is able to de-escalate change in behavior. And you know what? I felt that if we can have sessions that does simulation, because a lot of the time people understand when they are practical or simulation, especially when addressing change behaviors in people with dementia or delirium. So what I felt was this. I felt so very strongly that, you know, we need to change. How do we change? Because I said, number one, we do not have a guideline for dementia care in Australia for many, many years. So finally in 2016, there's one. And guess what is the principles of care for dementia for this country? The 10 principles. So can you please share this information and say that, look, choose whatever you like, but if you can have this as part of your organization to embrace about the ways of working. So going to caring for cognitive impairment, the Australia Commission for Safety and Quality in Healthcare felt this is important. Why? Because caring for cognitive impairment is not in the hospital accreditation platform for many years, until recently. And why we cannot make in our organization at that time to make training for dementia delirium compulsory. I said, why? This is our core business. So this is another platform. So with this, so we became one of the first hospital in the whole country to embrace caring for cognitive impairment campaign. We also have dignity in care. We have many champions. And we also want to share our ways of working, not just for our hospital, but we encourage other hospitals, including Canberra that we visited, including other hospitals in the country, in our state, to embrace this, to become champions. And we wanted to make certain that, you know, must not be a poster on the wall. There must be action that show and demonstrate leadership and changes, because we wanted to reduce and minimize harm. So I felt, oh my gosh, we cannot just have a poster. Let's do something. In 2015, I shared a taxi with Associate Professor Mark Yates in Perth. I told Mark, I'm not happy because I cannot make training for dementia compulsory. I can't, but I want to make it compulsory. But also we have to work with everybody to make sure that this is part of the national accreditation. So Mark said, I've got a formula. So he wrote to me a year later and said, got funding from Commonwealth, and it's going to be called National Rollout Dementia Program. that was championed by Ballarat Hospital. We did this in Victoria. We wanted to see if we can identify people with dementia and delirium early within the first 24 hours of hospital admission. Can we reduce complication? Hospital acquired complication. Examples, delirium. Examples, UTI. Example, pressure sore and pneumonia. So with that, they send interest, expression interest, and I said, Mark, choose us. We want to be number one. We'll start first. We're happy to take on the role of the first hospital in the country in 2015 to do this. 2016, we started this. We did a lot of promotion, grand rounds, emails, and have you. And we said, if we were to do this in our 10 wards, and we train everybody, the cooks and the chef and the cleaners and the doctors, the nurses, like health and the consumers, and we talked to them about this. How do we ensure that if we can train staff how to identify people with dementia in early, can we reduce the risk of complication? We know at all time, 40% of people in our acute care has got dementia. At any time, at least 30%. We know that, but those data are from overseas. So we have to have data from this country. And what was interesting was this: if we screen the person, or someone has got dementia or delirium, what do we do? So this is what Mark and the team. So we got Mary Theobald, the matron for Ballarat, and also Michelle, who's the cognitive practice nurse, and they did this. So this, you can see the symbol. To me, it looks like a sun. It looks like maybe a bird flying or shuttlecock, but it's actually derived and made by the Voices of Consumer Alliance group for Dementia Australia at that time. They said it's not a labeling. We're not labeling. It looks like an angel, I think. That's what they said. Can you see the angel, Alison, Lane? Look like an angel, no? So if we, I think so, I don't know what you can see. It looks like an angel to me. Can you see the wings? Yeah? So what it is, if someone comes in, they are screened with a tool. Tool can be 480, AMTS, MMSC. We use the tool, and you know who can do this? Everybody. So at that time, 10 wards. We make certain, we provide training, education, we inform family, we even have a research process to collect the data pre and post intervention and see if we intervene and do this, can we reduce complication? You know what? We did this, and immediately the take message is this: 30%, 33% of people in our hospital have got delirium. 33%. And in some environment where I work, 40% or more. So this is being put up as a bedside identifier on the top of the bed. What it means is that it means this, and I'll show you very shortly. It means this. So we screen with the tools, we display the card, and if this card were to go to the X-ray, it goes with the person. If it goes to somewhere, it goes with the person. There's also a journey board that looks smaller. What it means is that we need to support this person as best possible with whatever language tool. We need to make sure. What we need to make certain is that there are 9 processes. Introduce yourself. Make sure you have eye contact all the time. You know, to involve carers. Keep your sentence short and simple. And also, lastly, do not give too many options. Because you know what? I see often at that time, this is before we started all of this, like the food trolley is a kilometer away. And the person can't reach it. There's no processes to enhance the colors or sensory deficit in people with dementia. So we wanted to change to make sure that environment is healing, but also to get consent. So consenting this is important. We have an agreement in our hospital that we don't use this in our palliative care ward. We know at any one time, 89% of people in our palliative care ward has got a degree of delirium, if not dementia. Because we wanting this should not be this is utilized in a medical and a surgical ward. And you know which ward that did best from a data collection or from processing? The surgical ward, because you know they're so used to regimen and processes. But in the end, we say if we can prove, we can screen everybody after the periods, after the periods of the research, you know, So how we do it, we have master classes. So master class is exciting. So for Lynn and Alison, the next time you might want to do master class in dementia care. People like master classes. So today is a mini master class. What it means is this: you choose a topic, you choose a subject, you do a simulation. People love it. And I can promise you, your theater or your Zoom will be jam-packed. And then we train the trainer model. We train one person, say Narida or Maga. We train one, that one person will train hundreds more. Okay, so champions means you go back to your own environment, your workplaces. You are going to start. You're going to make dementia super sexy. Now, before I go towards the end of life, I wanted to tell you this: the bedside training and education is so important. And don't forget that your chef and cooks might say, we have no time to go upstairs to listen. You know what? We have PowerPoint slides that rotates on their TV screen downstairs in the kitchen, so they can't escape as well. Now, screening is important. So I'm not going to dwell too much about screening. So we use a tool in South Australia. So this has become our state standard. So South Australia adopt this. And also, I felt that we use a tool called 480. It took about 2 to 5 minutes to do. It's just to be able to pick up dementia or delirium. And if it's positive, we will put this up for our consumers. This is done in our hospital acute care environment. Okay, now this is obviously licensed and copyright by the team in Ballarat. If you are interested to know, you can write to your team, to the Royal Hobart Hospital, or you can write to me. I will link you to the team in Ballarat if you wish. So what I wanted to say is this is the principles of communication that I wanted to say to you about. Do not give too many choices, for instance. Now, I keep on emphasizing this. So you know what, we did this. How do we check how things are going? Because it's not fair to look after SA health hospitals. What about the private hospitals? So we did 2 years ago, we did our first state preparing, sharing, and caring for cognitive impairment conference. We invited everybody. Private hospitals are always left behind. Because remember, it doesn't mean that people might come into a private route. So we wanted to invite, keynote addresses. So we obviously invite Mark Yates, Sue Curl from Sydney came as well, and then the commissioner from Safety Quality. And you know what? The take-home message from this is this. I said, what if we know that we have this energy, we have experts, we have champions in this location. What if you meet them, or you ask them to come to talk or meet you in your organization? That could be in the country hospitals, that could be in a private. What if we do that for free? What if we share the energy and tell you that our ways of working is this during team care? And what if this is the see, my smiling kitten is still there, no? But obviously not moving as much as the first one. Okay, what if we can energize the northern network? So there are 3 networks: central, where I work, southern, and northern. So what if from central we can share our expertise with the northern hospitals and southern? So they actually do this. In fact, they become champion. They have their own teams, own champions, and spread this. And you know what? I felt, what about our country hospital? There are 8 hospitals in country regional South Australia. And you know what? They did this in 2018-19. We did a lot of training, train the champion models. And example, Port Pirie Hospital. I remember going there, driving there, meeting them, and they were fabulous. So they started this dating care, caring for chronic impairment campaign screening, and look at this. They said, in the Port Pirie Hospital, I underline this, the complication hospital acquired delirium is highest. But since this implemented is in November 2018, there's no more delirium in that hospital. Isn't that wonderful? So what we wanted to do is to prove, if we were to do this well, we can at least reduce delirium, pressure sore, UTI, and pneumonia for people who are vulnerable. You know how much cost of bed numbers, days that we save? A lot. So this is a win-win. And how much does it cost us? Well, how much does it cost to talk? You can share this with Zoom. Zoom is free, right? Alison, no charge. So what it means, but I also believe in this, like, obviously I'm grateful that people nominated us. So we got finalists for our state. That is irrelevant. What it means is empowered our nurses. Our nurses became like nurse consultant, became the matron for a private organization, became the head of the education for so these are, and then we have a nurse here who became like the nurse education lead for a private organization. To me, this is what a champion will go out and perhaps in their future life undertake this more and further and enhance this better than what we can do. Now, I'm going to talk to you, and then I don't know how much minutes I got left. I have to check with Alison. I just can't remember. So I assume I've got about 20 minutes, right? I'm guessing. Yeah. No. End of life. I'm going to tell you what I wanted to tell you this. So end of life to me is important. So I wish if I would have my final days, I want to eat Kentucky Fried Chicken only. I'll tell you why. Kentucky Fried Chicken. When I was young, when I was in primary school, if I do well in school, I did well in school. The reward from my father is a loving man. He doesn't say, I love you, son. He says, KFC. So Kentucky Fried Chicken is a language of love in our family. One box, the bigger the box, the bigger love that is. Okay? So as he was dying with cancer 2 years ago, we gave him Kentucky Fried Chicken. He can't eat it. But he said, Faizal, buy lots of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Buy lots, give it to the nurses. But I want to die at home. So we had 300 friends and families come for 3 days towards the end of his life. Oh my gosh, he cannot swallow water. But I can tell you, he was happy nodding, saying everyone being forced to eat Kentucky Fried Chicken. So to me, it's not about KFC, sorry. It's really about how can I do this on my own? I can't. I know there are millions of people behind Lynn, behind Alison, behind people to do this. So I felt there is this big void about supporting dignified end of life in people with dementia. I felt that strongly in our hospitals. And with COVID, oh my God, one visitor per day. Working with industries like Hammond Care, I know with Dementia Australia, and I know as a geriatrician, I felt that limiting family to go to aged care is really tough. It's really difficult. It's tough. But I know for certain, you need one and one voice. So we had consumers came together. We had I'm talking about the story, how this began. The Nightingale program became like this. It started with consumers saying, okay, remember the one that I chaired for quite some years, said, how do we do this? How do we help GP? Because telling GP page 16 on a silver book about medications of end of life is not enough. Asking Pelcare only is not enough. Terminal agitation due to dementia, you need multiple dimensional, interdiscipline experts with the family to get this, to achieve this. So I was so glad at that time there was this push and there was funding eventually that came. So there was a project person, project work, and then employment of nurse consultant who have expertise in palliative care and dementia care. And I said, look, I've been supporting Dementia Australia for many years anyway, and then my other job, I think I'm happy to become the person, the expert person, as a medical person for this. So the team started with 1 and 2 and 3 full time. But you know what? Working closely with a palliative care network, family, GP, but also asking. If we were to network someone, we want to make sure the client or the consumer, we ask, where would you like to have your final days? We wish it's at home, for those who are at home. And we will work closely with them, either with our aged care sector, metropolitan referral unit, or Palcare network services. We have to achieve this. So our nurses, which I hope that if you have time to listen to their presentation this coming Friday via Dementia Australia National Conference Zoom network. So this is the article that is out this month in the Australian Journal of Dementia Care about how Nightingale program helped to change people's life and also changing mindset. So this is the picture of Jane, Alison, and Tony. So all have got training in Palcare and dementia. So we get referrals from anywhere in the state. We work closely with the expert bodies, I mean doctors or nurses. We work with Palcare. Referrals often come from Palcare. And then what we'll do is that if we need to identify what are the unresolved situations, issues, if someone wishes to have their end of life at home, we should do that. And I felt that if at that time I had this group, when Ralph Porter was alive, I hope at that time he could have his final days at home. But we didn't have this until 5 years ago. What I meant to tell you is this. We need a lot more people like you, but we need to make sure that dementia, end of life in dementia care must be super sexy, because we need to inspire those young people to come to become you. Okay, I know there are not many people joining us today, but you know what? This will be going to be recorded, and I hope you share this. Also, I felt, oh, what if we have a process to audit? So quite some years ago, so Louise Hazenronje was the network manager for SA Health, and she's got a background working as a nurse, also had other degrees in management, and Louise said, Faizal, I wanted to quit my job for a bit, working in SA Health, and I wanted to sign up to do PhD. And my PhD subject is how can we develop a questionnaire uh, based on the 10 principles of dignity in care. We can audit how well we look after our patients, consumers, and supporting their families in our caring environment, right? So we did a Delphi study processes, working with the local university here. We have a lot of networks of consumer advocate group experts throughout Australia, and then asking the right questions, test it in hospitals environment in a few of our main networks here, and then to come up to streamline it so that we can use this. So this is almost complete, but it needs a few more setting or a few more exposure for this to be shared. What I meant to say is this: if I ask you, how do you know how well you look after your consumer? We do consumer feedback every day in our ward, but how well can you tell me, or I tell you, that I'm giving all the 10 principles of dignity in care with a working to my consumer today? So this is why I think this energy is important. And you know, this is back to the resources that I wanted to share with you. I think we are coming towards the end now. Reigniting humanity is what you do, right? And what I do too. I'm uncertain because usually when I do talks like this, I'll be standing in front of you or with you, talking to you and doing some demonstration and then showing you, oh, this is how I should approach, how to shake hands, how to use primary colors, how to understand, you know, how do we heal the environment, what audit tool we use. I don't have that time. But one thing for certain, you know what? We have a good website. We have mailing addresses. And I've got this platform PowerPoint that you can take with you. I just need to send them to Alison and to Lynn.